It's time for the Rob Staton Show. It's all brought to you by Superior Linen Service, family owned and operated since 1926, committed to delivering the highest quality of products and service to the greater Puget Sound area. Get your free quote today at suplinen.com or give them a call, 253-383-2636. It is the Puck Sports Studios built by Limback Lumber. Rob is with us. Of course, you can check all of his work up at SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Video content up on YouTube, including a post-game show he does after every Seahawks game into the early morning hours back there in England. Rob Staton Football there on YouTube. Follow him on X at Rob Staton. Well, it was we were joking before we came on. I had such the high of the Apple Cup the day before. Then I'm getting up for the Seahawks game. I'm like, okay, well, I think we're going to win. I think it's going to be okay. Kind of like half-ass into it. It wasn't at times the most exciting game, but Rob, they grind out another win. And, I kept thinking about how just another gutty victory by these guys. Things didn't go great, but yet they find themselves this week gearing up for the Dolphins 2-0.
Yeah, kind of a reverse of last week because the first half was really good and they've got into it's a 4-point lead at halftime. And then after halftime, it was the Patriots who did what the Seahawks did last week, which is they just seemed to reorganize themselves. They sort of committed to the running game, had a lot of success in the running game as Seattle did against Denver, and the Seahawks didn't really have much of an answer for that. And I must admit, Puck, I was sat in our office at the BBC about to do the Chiefs Bengals broadcast, and I felt really down because I was kind of sat there thinking, I thought they'd be better than this in the trenches. The offensive line's a whole different thing, but the D line was getting gashed. 185 rushing yards in the end, and I just thought the Seahawks are going to end up losing this game because they got their asses kicked in the trenches, and I didn't want it to be that way. Like I could appreciate like a back and forth, big defensive game where both defenses dominate and it limits the scoring. But to just get run all over was not what I expected from the Seahawks. So to be in a position where they were going to lose because of that, and just as I'd resigned myself to a loss, Puck, even though I just sort of got into my head, they are going to lose this game. It's 1-1. It's fine. Let's go and do the Chiefs Bengals. Let's just forget about it. Whatever. They just won the game. Like they just turned it around. They blocked the kick. Brilliant block by Julian Love.
Yep.
They get a field goal. They get a stop after that, which was really important. They get another stop at overtime, and then they drive and get the field goal. I did not see that coming whatsoever. The turn in the game, you have to give him a lot of credit for. And in particular, I think you have to give a lot of credit to Geno Smith because he put the team on his back in that game. I think it was a really good performance from Geno Smith. They don't win that game without that performance from Geno Smith, and I think he was the X factor in the end.
And Rob, we've talked. How many shows in the offseason did we do talking about that quarterback situation?
Yeah, a lot, just every week nearly.
Almost every week we talked about him, and basically you and I pushing him out the door to find a replacement. And again, I still think, and I think even the most supportive and the biggest Geno Smith fans would even say this. I mean, again, you have to find something in the future for this team there at quarterback, but it should not be lost of the performance that he had on Sunday. You're right. I mean, his numbers, Rob, could have been even better without multiple drops from Noah Fant. You had drops from JSN. You had drops from DK. Despite those guys having unbelievable games, they still had their drops. I mean, he was pinpoint. His movement in the pocket, throwing on time and rhythm, the arm strength, all of it was just on display. I mean, I think it was, besides was it the Saints game? I think in New Orleans, where he was just ridiculous. I think it's the best game I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, I think I had a look at the stats yesterday, and I can't remember whether C.J. Stroud got above 300 yards, but there was only 3 quarterbacks, and that includes Thursday Night Football, who threw for more than 300 yards this weekend. 2 of the quarterbacks in that situation lost. So it was Jared Goff, who threw 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. Brock Purdy, who had an interception and a fumble, had 1 touchdown. They threw over 300 yards, both lost. Geno Smith, 0 turnovers, had the 300 yards. No help in the running game at all. And just the drives, and like you say, the throws. I think there was only really 1 throw. There was 1 throw, I think it was in overtime or late in the game, I can't remember. There was one throw that I thought, that was probably off. Everything else seems to be on the money. And you've got to give him a ton of credit for that. Now, one thing we have discussed a lot is the need to make every game a referendum on whether Geno Smith is a franchise quarterback for the Seahawks or not. And I hope we avoid that week to week. Right now, my plea to the Seahawks fans is let's just enjoy the win and enjoy the fact that Geno Smith played superbly. And then next week, if he doesn't play as well against the Dolphins, let's not spend the next few days debating how we replace him. Let's give him a chance to be consistent. Let's just see how this goes. We don't have to make any definitive, declarative statements today. But the fact is, I thought he played a really good game against Denver and a really great game against New England. And he's probably the main reason that they are 2-0. So well done to Geno Smith. He thoroughly deserves the praise that he's getting today.
And I also want to heap some praise here on Ryan Grubb here for a second. And this is 2 weeks in a row. One, it was last week of not overreacting to what was happening in the first half, sticking to the running game, maybe calling some different running plays, but saying we're still going to be committed to the running game. We're not going to sit back here and just pass. And I think that they recognized, without Ken Walker, and I think they probably thought Charbonnet would be able to fill in and be good and give them something in the running game. But he didn't. Part of that's the offensive line issues, but Charbonnet is just not Walker. I'm a big Charbonnet fan. I'll be honest with you. I was surprised how much he struggled yesterday in running the ball. It just didn't look like the same Zach Charbonnet I saw last year, and certainly not the Charbonnet I saw in UCLA. I thought felt he was running a little scared, maybe a little tentative. I thought at times, but that's just kind of the my observation of him. But I think that they realized, okay, the running game's not going to work. And then Grubb just said, we need to get it to our playmakers. And specifically, we need to get it to DK and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And that's exactly what he did. I think to me, the most important number that came out of that game on Sunday was 30. And that was the number of targets that Jackson Smith and Jigba and DK Metcalf had. I'd love to go back, and if I had more time, and if I actually had some work ethic, Rob, which I do not, I would go back and look at every Seahawks box score for the last 20 years and try to find another game in which they had two wide receivers have a combined targets of 30. I bet maybe there's one or two. And they went out and made it a point to get the ball into their hands in different ways, too. That's what I liked about Ryan Grubb and the offense on Sunday.
Well, it kind of goes back to last week. Last week I was reminded that, tackling and turnovers were not banned. And this week we're reminded that, targeting your best playmakers is not banned either. And I completely agree and second everything you've said there. How refreshing to see the Seahawks go to those two players. They didn't try and feature, in fairness to, nothing defines the Carroll era more than the fact that he threw to, Ricardo Lockett in the biggest play of what ended up being his career, really. So, they targeted the two main players. They delivered. The thing on Zach Charbonnet, I was thinking about this quite a lot after the game, was I'm going to give him a mulligan for this one. I thought last week, one of the main reasons they did have some successful runs up the middle, but the main impact I thought Ken Walker had was when he got to the perimeter. And I think maybe being able to run to the perimeter stretched out that Denver line a little bit and sort of made it easy to soften up the middle. Now, with New England, I think they decided we are not going to let the Seahawks run the ball like they did against Denver. So they kind of tightened up the middle. We're going to make Geno Smith win the game, which he did. We're going to make them try and beat us. If they want to beat us up front, they're going to do it head on, and we're going to eliminate all of the space. And the Seahawks just did not run block up the middle very well at all. Now, Zach Charbonnet is not a perimeter runner. Ken Walker is. Ken Walker will take an inside run and bounce it outside because it's just his nature to do that. Zach Charbonnet is a physical, between the tackles, running back. And there was no room between the tackles in this game. Like, there was just no space. And I do wonder a little bit as the game got on if he just got a little bit frustrated, if he just didn't know what to do. He has not got those quick twitch fibers to bounce it outside as well as Ken Walker can. So I don't think he really had much of a chance in this game. I think New England did a very good job just taking away the run. They put the game on Geno Smith, and Geno Smith said, fine by me, put the team on his back, and he won the game.
Yeah. I thought he had some, I think, not as all, lost, I think, with Charbonnet. I know it's not a lot. He had 5 catches for 31 yards. I thought, I think it was in the overtime or last drive, or no, overtime. I think he had a nice key reception, was able to, turn it upfield. He was very good in pass blocking, real good. He was picking up guys left and right. So, but yeah, he just didn't have much of an impact there in the ground game. But it just, those two, I mean, Smith and Metcalf were just, I mean, that's what we've been waiting for with DK is that number right? Are those numbers? 14 targets, 10 catches, 129 yards, and a touchdown. And again, it's the touchdown is a long just go route, and he beats his guy and he shows off his speed. They have miscommunication, all that. But there's just other little things, moving them around in the lineup, not giving it to him, not lining him up in the same. I can swear on here. I know this, but I always catch myself because I'm with you in the BBC, and I feel like I can't swear. But it's just like Waldron's every fucking time. We're just line them up in the same spot, and Grubb doesn't do that. He moves them around a lot and gets him the ball in different spaces. And I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it, and it's just refreshing. And we've been waiting. And he's had other good games, impactful games, but. No doubt with the 16 targets and the 12 grabs for $117. I mean, that's the breakout game for Jackson Smith and Jigba that I think we've all been waiting for.
Well, I woke up very early to take my car for a service this morning, Puck, and Shane Waldron was trending where I am. So, that's never a good sign for the Chicago Bears after what happened last night. So, obviously anybody who was still awake at 3 o'clock in the morning was probably watching that game here in the UK. And there's a sizable following for the Chicago Bears because of the 80s over here. So I think they were all tweeting the words Shane Waldron sucks at the same time. And like you say, just, this is what you want to see from DK. And the great thing is look, we've had a game where the Broncos did a good job, impacting the passing game with the pressures and stuff like that. And Seattle ran the ball well. Now we've had a game where Seattle couldn't run the ball at all and they passed very well. So the Dolphins have been presented with this challenge now. Pick your poison. Are you going to draw attention to DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba and maybe full coverage a little bit? If you do, can the Seahawks get back to running the ball effectively? And if they decide to do more of a Patriots-style defensive scheme and try and take away the running game, you would imagine it's going to be another good day for Geno Smith. So, I think that's a good challenge. That's the point of having balanced weapons and structure on your offense. It's just, please, can the offensive line just be consistent? Can we just have a game where you're not useless at something like pass blocking last week, run blocking this week? You don't have to be elite. We do not need to see Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson level performance from you guys. Just be okay for a couple of weeks. If you can manage that, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's both spots right now. I mean, Connor Williams had to beat a couple times, but it's those two guards, and the rhyme or reason. I don't really know what to do. I mean, Bradford just picks up penalties left and right. They worked in Christian Haynes in there a little bit. Lakeland Tomlinson has been a disappointment again through 2 games. I mean, maybe if you ever decide something between Bradford and Haynes, maybe you just say default whoever loses out. If we have this open competition, the other one's just going to bounce over there and play. And maybe they can do that. They haven't really done that. They haven't subbed him out, I don't think. Did they ever take Tomlinson out of the game yesterday?
No, I don't. No. I don't. They definitely did with Bradford, didn't they? They spotted him a couple of times.
They did. But Bradford, they brought him out. They brought in Haynes, but I don't think they ever brought out Tomlinson. But yeah, it's, but again, they got the ball out a little bit quicker. They made it easier on that offensive line. And that's the other, getting back to Grubb, what I like, and just about how they view offense is that they recognize that they're deficient there. So not like Waldron, where Waldron would say, well, we'll just call the same offense. You guys just block better. I think Grubb realizes, well, these guys can't hold blocks forever. We need to do different things and get the ball out faster. And they did that.
Well, look, here's a suggestion. I don't know whether I'm trying to remember in my head to go back a couple of years to the draft, the 2022 draft.
Okay.
I can't remember whether, I don't think the Seahawks had Evan Neal graded as highly as the guy who went to Carolina. I'm trying to remember. But Evan
Want me
Neal,
to pull up the 2022 draft for you?
I seem to remember. I think it might have been Brady Henderson said it or something like that. So I think somebody reported that there was that the guy who went to Carolina, the Seahawks did like, and I think it was Evan Neal that they had Cross ahead of him. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I'm wondering whether that was the case. If they rated Evan Neal somewhat highly, Evan Neal can't get on the field for the New York Giants. Evan Neal is an epic bust at this point, but they've tried to fit him in at tackle. I think he's played a little bit of guard. I can remember watching him and thinking this guy could be an excellent guard in the NFL, but I never liked him at tackle and had him graded in the first round as purely a guard. Now, because he can't get on the field, the Giants season feels somewhat over already. Could you chuck something their way? And I'm not talking about a high draft pick here. I'm talking about, look, we're going to give you something, anything for this guy to see if he could maybe come in and just add to the competition, for a year or two.
I got you.
Just to see if he could play left guard, to see if he could challenge Laken Tomlinson. And the fact that he has played tackle would give you that bit of versatility if George Fant is going to miss a bit of time. It's the kind of thing, whenever you kind of spitball a trade suggestion, there's always so many reasons why it won't happen. But that was just a name that popped into my head as you were talking there, thinking, what is a potential solution out there? It has to be somebody's discarded player. Well, there's somebody who a couple of years ago, the Giants at least thought was a top 10 worthy pick. So someone will give him a second chance, you'd imagine, in the same way that someone's inevitably going to give Bryce Young a second chance when Carolina dumps him. So, would the Seahawks do it? They have taken on reclamation projects in the past.
Well, I'd give him two offensive linemen in that draft top 10 because Cross was taken 3 spots later.
Yeah.
With 2 spots later. They're at number 9. So yeah, why not? Let's do it. Bring them on. Let's go. Take them on. We talk about offensive line all the time with these guys, and it just continues to kind of always be a conversation we're going to have like almost every year and almost every week until they can actually figure the goddamn thing out. The defensive line, I thought, played the running game that, they were, whenever they were doing their job and the linebackers weren't making the plays. I mean, they certainly probably, you make the argument they weren't doing technically their job because they should have been getting 185 yards on the ground. I thought from a pressure standpoint, what Williams was giving you, what Murphy was giving you, it felt like Boye was in the backfield pretty much all the time. But it was, so there's the good of that. And that was a lot of good because they felt like they were in the backfield and should have had, at least doubled the sacks that they had on Brissett. But for some reason, Jacoby Brissett was able to get out of a lot of pressure. But again, the concerning part is 185 yards on the ground to a team that was pretty one-dimensional what they wanted to do offensively.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good performance by Leonard Williams off the bat. I think he's gonna. I think a lot of people were discussing. I'm sure we probably discussed it at some point. Is he worth the investment? The second round pick and then the big contract. And I think that he's showing that he was. He is just a really impactful player who you can line up across the line. I think he's the kind of player that really fits this Mike Macdonald system as well. And I think that he's proving his worth. Run defense wise, so let me give you some grades here. Puck that I'm looking at.
I love grades.
Let me look. I've gone off PFF a little bit because I'm going to write a big article about this. I don't understand how Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback, got such a low grade, and your man Cam Ward got an elite grade for throwing just a bunch of touchdowns against Ball State in a 62-0 win.
It's the same. I mean, and I think there's hit and miss with PFF, but it was like 5 years ago. I think Aaron Rodgers had a game where he threw like 430 yards. He had like 5 touchdowns. I want to say like 2 incompletions.
I remember it.
And they downgraded him.
Yeah. They gave him like an average grade or something.
I'm like, how do you how do you come to that? Well, they weren't that difficult throws. I'm like, he was like 30 of 32 for 450 yards, like 5 touchdowns. It's just so stupid. So I'm with you. There's a give and take with it.
This is really quick. Like Garrett Nussmeier went into South Carolina, great defense, intense atmosphere. LSU struggling like crazy on defense and just kept throwing like over the middle, in between defenders, driving the team forward. They had nothing. It was him against the world. He threw like 1 bad interception at the end, then still came back and won the game with a 4th quarter drive. He was exceptional. He got like a 65 grade, which is like average. And then I watched the first quarter and a half of Miami against Ball State to watch Cam Ward. Yeah. And it was just extended handoff. Oh, look, Ball State can't tackle and he's run 40 yards for a touchdown. Like, it made me think I could have done that game. I could have quarterbacked the Hurricanes against Ball State, and they gave him a 90-something grade. And I was like, he didn't do anything. Like, the guy probably didn't even have to take a shower before he went home. Like, he was not, he didn't exert himself at all. So with that caveat in mind, this was the run defense. So Leonard Williams had the best run defense grade amongst all of the Seahawks defenders. You know, Boya Mafe was okay. Tyrese Knight was okay in that regard. Jaron Reed, average grade in terms of run defense. But then at the other end of the scale, this is the most surprising thing. Jonathan Hankins was awful. Like, he had an awful run defense grade. And that's pretty much what he's in the team to do, is to defend the run. Byron Murphy had a really bad run defense grade. Draymond Jones had a really bad run defense grade. And Derek Halls was not good either. So, you know, there's a mixed bag there. There were some guys, I bet it, like, in this, let's just give PFF the benefit of the doubt in this argument. I bet if you actually, I mean, I never do this. I'm never going to go and watch all 22 and go, oh, you know, the scheme. That's not my kind of thing. You know, I wouldn't know what to do. But I bet if someone who did do that kind of thing went back and watched the tape, I bet that would align. That some guys were doing their jobs and others just either weren't or didn't do a good enough job. And that will have been the Hankins, the Murphys, the Draymond Jones, and Derek Hall. And that they were probably the reason why the run defense was no good.
Yeah, I just think, you know, whether it's, you know, shedding blocks, not getting off their blocks, you know, and then is it Dotson and Baker not being able to, you know, fill the gaps and you know, and get those tackles. I mean, a lot of the job, I mean, the primary job of those defensive linemen is always to kind of, you know, keep those offensive line upright and, you know, take up space and not get pushed around and let those linebackers make plays. They probably just weren't making enough plays. And I just, you know, the tackling from week one was just not as good as it was as good in week two. I mean, they missed a bunch of tackles in week two. You know, they, like I said, they should have had, well, I don't even know what they finished sack numbers wise off the top of my head. I have to go back and look, but they should have at least doubled it. I mean, Boya Mafe could have had 4 by himself, but you know, they just couldn't wrap him up and drop him. I think if you ask me what's this defense going to play like the rest of the year, more like they played kind of against New England, more like against Denver in terms of tackling. I think they're going to play more like Denver in terms of their tackling. But again, they weren't as elite as they were against Denver. But also, Robin, we talked about this against Denver. It's a rookie quarterback. It's at home. Jacoby Brissett, however you feel about him, is a veteran quarterback that's been around for a while, and he's good. You know, he makes plays, and he's a big physical, you know, specimen back there. And you had to go on the road, but you know, they still held him to 20 points on the road, and for the most part, that should get you a win almost every week. Yeah,
I'm just having a look. They had 7 missed tackles. I don't know how that. I've not got the numbers here for the. Actually, I have got the numbers here.
Felt like more than that, but all right.
Yeah, well, it did, because last week, you know, Rayshon Jenkins apparently missed 3 tackles on his own against the Broncos.
And he didn't miss anything on week 1.
Exactly. Well, apparently that was in week 1. Apparently, so
that was in week 1. They said he missed 3.
They said he missed 3, and they had 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So according to this, they had 11 missed tackles last week, and I didn't see that. So I don't know. Maybe that is accurate. Again, you know, PFF, take it with a pinch of salt. I agree with you. I think we probably will be closer to week 1, but you kind of have to. I don't know. I just want to see. I was going to say something, and then I'm disagreeing myself as I'm kind of saying the words. I was going to say that I wanted to see it level out, so that, you know, the run defense, you know, it's not going to be great every week, but there'll be a point of it only gets so bad, and that the pass. But then, you know, that's talking in such an idealistic way. Like, you've got no right to say, I expect the Seahawks to not have a game where they get run on. Like, it might happen. Like, let's put it this way. If they give up 185 yards against the Niners in a few weeks and beat the Niners like the Vikings did yesterday, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, really, there's just if anything, what yesterday proves is that what you really need is just in those big moments, you know, there's sort of like a handful of moments in a game where you've just got to win those moments. And this is what, I don't know if you were ever part of this puck, because this was a long time before you and I ever had a conversation about football. But the Seahawks fan base used to tear itself apart discussing whether the run game mattered. And it always used to feel like, what a stupid debate to have. Like, it matters to the point of it's part of the game, but it gets down to a select few moments in any game of football that is close. Yeah. And you've got to win those moments. And if the Patriots kick the field goal and go 6 points up, they probably win the game. Julian Love gets a great block. You know, if the Patriots win the coin toss, at that point, I'm thinking the Patriots are probably going to win the game. But the Seahawks get, 3 and out, whatever it was, or,
great play by Dotson on that 3rd and 1.
Unbelievable. You know, by the way, the kind of play that I didn't see Jordan Brooks make for the Dolphins the other night. I saw him running after defenders after they got past him. Yeah. And by the way, Bobby Wagner was awful in week 1. Like, awful. I hate to say it, but he was awful for the Commanders in week 1. So the Seahawks definitely made the right call moving on to the linebackers that they did with hindsight. But it's by the by. You know, I just think that the team is, you know, they need to get those big moments. And they have done against Denver and they have done against New England. It's very hard to do that every week. And you need a lot of luck sometimes in these games. But so far, so good. And if they are going to be a moments team, then they're going to win more than they lose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... It's simplistic, right? I mean, we all get caught up in stats, and I look at them all the time. Oh, what's our rush defense? How many yards on the ground, passing, and all that? I mean, really, there is, for a defense, there's only one number. There's one. It's just points. How many points you give up? I don't care if they give up, you know, they're dead last in every category. But if they're top 5, in points given up, good. That's all that matters. Because, you know, teams change so much from the 20 to the 20, you know, and then it's once you get in, that's where this is nothing new, but it's where all these games are won. How do you score inside the 20? How do you score? Because everything shrinks. All of it does. And it's harder to run plays. And the teams that can run the ball at the times more down there are going to win because it's harder to run routes. I mean, everybody kind of knows this. And that's where you take advantage of these games, and that's where your defense has got to step up. And at least in 2 weeks, they've done that.
Well, here's the other thing. So I don't know how you felt watching it. It kind of felt to me at various points in the game like New England are just doing whatever they want. Like Hunter Henry turned into Rob Gronkowski. Like they ran the ball very, very well. And yet when you actually look at those stats, it didn't feel like I was watching this game. So the teams had pretty much the same number of first downs. The Seahawks had 18. The Patriots had 19. Like the Seahawks had better yardage than the Patriots. And of course, when you have a busted play to DK Metcalf for a huge win, it helps. But the Seahawks had 358 yards. The Patriots only had 310. And watching the game, I would have thought, they had 400 yards or something like that. But they didn't, you know, and actually 310 would have been a fantastic day for a Pete Carroll defense over the last few years. Like that was actually a restrictive performance. It's just that it's that one number. Like 185-yard rushing yards, but they ran it on 36 attempts. Like, so they actually did need to run the ball a lot to get those numbers. And when you look at third down, you know, again, very similar. The Patriots were only 6 of 16. Right. So when they actually got to those get off the field moments, the Seahawks managed to do it. And they were 7 and 15 on third down themselves, the Seahawks. So again, very even. It just all paints the picture of what maybe didn't feel like it. Like I bet to Patriots fans at the end of the first half, they thought the Seahawks have wrestled control here. They're going to win. And then in the second half, it felt to me, and I'm probably guessing many others, the Patriots have wrestled control here and they're going to win. But in the end, it just, what the stats prove and what the game shows, it was two well-coached, evenly matched teams. Yeah. And the Seahawks made the plays they needed to make at the end to get the win. So and that's what football is about.
Yeah, and I think we find out, I think, Rob, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out at the end of the year when this all shakes out that, and I think based on what they did, you know, in week 1 going into Cincinnati and then, you know, this game against Seattle, I think you're going to find out New England's a better team than everyone thought they were going to be. I mean, I don't know what that record-wise is. Are they going to be 9-8 or whatever? But I just think that they're better than people are giving them credit for.
I said after the game that I think if Drake May is a good quarterback, then you can imagine that being a pretty good team. Like, they've got to sort their offensive line out. You know, that's clear, but Drake May can move around, he can scramble. And then the other thing is they need some weapons. You know, Jalen Polk got a touchdown, but I think it was something like 4 catches for 25 yards from their receivers. Yeah, they need some more weapons. That's why they're trying to trade for Brandon Ayuk. You know, they need weapons, they need offensive line. But actually, defensively, you know, they seem like they've got a coach who is, like Mike McDonald, on, you know, ahead of his brief. And then you've got some good players. And then you have like just some work that needs to be done on the offense. And for the Seahawks, it's slightly different, but it's still, you know, offensive line needs some work. There's a couple of other things, but, you know, with time and experience, they can move along. Obviously, the Seahawks have got a quarterback who's at one end of his career. The Patriots are going to turn it to Drake May eventually. So those are two differences. But you could easily see the Patriots being a tough out for a lot of teams. And I think this is going to be a different season. I think this is look, if the Raiders going in and beating the Ravens, I think this is going to be an unpredictable season. I think we're going to see the odd get, especially early in the season. Who expected the Vikings to beat the Niners the way that they played on Monday Night Football?
Who was the quarterback of the Raiders?
It's Gardner Minshew.
That's right.
There you go. Look, you've had a good weekend.
It was a great weekend. First of all, Minshew was unbelievable in the second half for them. Deion Henley got the game ball for the Chargers, and the Cougs win. I mean, it's all lining up, Rob. See, it's America's team, and I'm starting to think the Cougars are not America's team. They're the world's team. And I think it's time you over there and people in England start supporting them. They're not America's team. They're the world's team. Well, everybody loves an underdog. Get on board.
Well, the thing is, I don't, as I've always quick to point out, and in fairness, people don't really accuse me of having a college team. But I've always tried to stay, because I haven't got the time to watch one team. I only dedicate enough of my time with all of this stuff, so I can't dedicate to a team. But what I would say is, when I go to Seattle, you cannot shift for Seahawks merch and Huskies merch. But I never are able to find any Washington State.
What do you want? You want me to send you? I'll send you something.
In 2017, I got a just like a pullover which said Washington State on it. I loved it, and I just wore it out. So I had to chuck it. And then every time I go back, I'm in the market for some Cougars gear, and I can never find any of this stuff.
Well, we're gonna get you something. What size are you? What do you small?
Oh no, medium.
Yeah, medium. I'm gonna get you some. We're gonna get you stuff. I'm gonna send it your way.
Well, listen, I did manage to catch the very end of the game on a illegal stream, and because it's not on the TV over here, and well, it was an interesting finish.
Well, again, for all of Jed Fish's talk about being NFL prepared and all this wealth of NFL knowledge he has on his staff, it was one of the most boneheaded plays I've ever seen a head coach make. I think it's the single worst call in Apple Cup history. It's terrible.
Wow. I have not seen that many Apple Cups to determine whether it was that, but it just, as soon as you saw him running to the right, you're like,
what are you doing?
Is this it?
Go watch our guy Johnny Mateer. Now, this won't mean anything for the pros because he never amounted to anything in the pros. And I'm not saying Johnny Mateer is some NFL quarterback, but he reminds me an awful lot of Jake Locker. He is just so much Jake Locker in him. And I think a lot of it too is that they play similar styles, but they both wear number 10. But and again, I'm not saying he's going to go into the NFL and be drafted wherever Locker was, and then Locker didn't work out for him. But just from a college ball level, that very much the comp there of Jake Locker. The what's shaping up great for these guys right now, and you don't wish any ill will towards a player. So if you see Simon, tell him I'm sorry. But the Dolphins, when they don't have Tua, and they got to start Skylar Thompson this week, I mean, that's a win. They should win. There's no reason they lose that game at home. And then they go on the road. They'll play a very good Detroit team. And, I'm just going to chalk it up. The Detroit wins that game. They come back, they play the Giants. They should handle the Giants. I mean, they got a great chance to be 4-1 before they host the 49ers. And then who knows if McCaffrey is back or not.
Well, hopefully I will see Sign in a few weeks of the first London game, NFL game. So I will tell him that you said hello.
Thank you.
What I can't believe, Puck, is certain teams, when people criticize John Schneider, and look, sometimes it's perfectly valid, especially with this offensive line stuff that's got, the fact that Seahawks not had a good offensive line for a long time is a criticism that needs to be voiced, by the fan base. But also, he gets a lot right. And it's when I look at the Dolphins that you kind of realize it could be a lot worse. How can you sign Tua Tagovailoa to a huge contract knowing that he has had concussion and injury issues? And it's not the contract that I have an issue with. It's how has he not got a backup better than Skylar Thompson? If there was ever a quarterback who needs a veteran, experienced backup.
Sure.
Because, look, I'm not even saying that what happened to Tua, it might be a long-term thing. It might be that, everybody's talked about it. There's no point pretending that people haven't talked about whether his career is in jeopardy here. But even if it was just a 2-week thing, which is plausible, they had to anticipate that they were going to need somebody to play a couple of games this year.
Yeah.
Like, how can they be throwing the ball to Skylar Thompson with a great look? I don't want this to be famous last words and him throw for 400 yards next week either. But and be like lofted above the shoulders of his teammates.
Yeah.
And
that idiot over in England said, I was terrible. I remember.
It's your fault. Yeah, it's
he's
your
gonna
fault.
do it. He's gonna do an interview on the field. That son of a bitch Staton. This game was for him.
But it's a good point, though, isn't it? Like, how have they not gone out and got a better backup than this? Like, you would have thought they would do something. There's a whole bunch of quarterbacks who have got ties to the Shanahan scheme as well that they could have gone and got. Jimmy G is somebody like that. Jimmy G looks like the kind of guy. He's the kind of guy who would love to live in Miami. Like, look at him.
He'd kill it in Miami. Where is he?
I can't remember. He's a backup somewhere, though, isn't he?
Where is Jimmy Grubb? Skylar Thompson went to what college did he go to? Do you know this? If you know this, man, A+. I had no clue. I don't remember him in college. I watch a ton of college football.
Is it something like? Oh no, it's not
Big
like
12.
Michigan.
Think Big 12.
Big 12. Was it Kansas State?
There you go. Good job. Kansas State.
So Jimmy G is with the Rams.
The Rams. Okay.
So so they could have had. I mean, look, maybe he doesn't like Matt McDonald, but to me, like Jimmy G looks like if you rang him and said, "Do you fancy a weekend in Miami?" Let alone like a contract to go and live there.
Sure.
He would say, "I'll see you on the beach."
Well, how about it's just even a situation like, I mean, a little bit different, but going into the season, right? JJ McCarthy was going to be the Vikings starting quarterback. What did Minnesota do? They got Sam Darnold. Back him up. That looks like it's going to pay off. He played great. Played great against the Niners.
Why haven't the Dolphins done this? Like that's a bad mistake on their behalf. And you're right. Like, you look at this game now and you think the Seahawks should win, and they have to win. And this is the thing. Like, they'll be this is what's great about us having this conversation. Do you know how many podcasts or radio shows this week will go, you've got to take every game and its value merits. You've got to respect them. The Seahawks should win at home against Skylar Thompson. And if they don't, we'll be sat here in a week saying, that wasn't good. Like, they have to go and win this game. And I'm telling you, Tyreek Hill is not going to be like, pumped, come on, Skylar Thompson time. Like, he's not going to be like, it's going to have an energy level diminishing effect on all of the team, the fact that he's going to be trotting out there. So handle business. It doesn't have to be a blowout. You could win it by 3 points in overtime again. Just make sure that you come out of this week 3-0.
From a betting perspective, I'd like them to win by more than 6. Since they're 5.5-point favorites. So if they can figure that out, that would be great. Win by 6 or more. But they're 5.5-point favorites. Of course they should win the game. Their starting quarterback is out. Their running backs are banged up. Anyone's going to take it one game at a time. That's for coaches to say. They need to beat them. And then again, I will chalk up a loss to Detroit. Then they play the Giants. They're terrible. And they better beat the Giants before they face San Francisco. Here's the other thing that I like about this game, because this is how they perform this week will give you a lot of insight on how Mike, and I know we can look at what Baltimore did last year, how Mike McDonald's going to defend Kyle Shanahan in a few weeks when they play him. Because same system. I mean, I know it's going to be, there's wrinkles and differences, but he was there. He was the coordinator. But I think it's a real good test for this defense to see the way that he calls plays. They're not going to get the full playbook with Tua out, but again, the formations, how he wants to move guys around, and all of that. It's a good little I guess kind of preseason game before they see the real thing in a few weeks.
Yeah, and the other good thing is who is the Dolphins defensive coordinator? It is Anthony Weaver, who was with Mike McDonald in Baltimore. Like, he was the assistant head coach working on the defense with Mike McDonald. So the defensive system is going to be very well known by McDonald going into this game. And I think that could be a little bit of an advantage for them too. But yeah, you're right. It's going to be fascinating to see how they get on. A little betting tip, by the way. This is something we should all remember for next summer. Right? Find a team that the bookies like, that all the bookmakers like, such as Miami. Identify one of these teams that the bookies like, with a quarterback who is a potential injury risk. Look at his backup quarterback and then pick a game early in the season when they're on the road and the odds are probably quite stacked in the favor of Miami, and then just stick like $30 on that or something. And then when if the quarterback gets injured, then you're in a great chance to win a lot of money. But if he doesn't, you've still got a chance of winning the bet because they're on the road. So, like, I think it's a good sort of tactic to look at for next year.
How do you go in from looking at the other game? How do you go in from a rooting interest? Do you this weekend? Obviously, it's Miami and Seattle. We want the Seahawks to win. Niners, Rams. Do you want the Niners to beat them to kind of like just bury the Rams early, get them to 0-3, or do we want to see the Rams win to give the Niners a second loss? I can't decide which way to go.
I want the Niners to finish 1-16 the rest of the way.
Okay, so you're going to be rooting for the Rams then. You want the Rams to knock them off. Okay.
Rams. Right. I want the Rams to destroy. Like, I don't get that. I'm not worried about the Rams. I'm not worried about the Rams. The Rams are too injured, too banged up.
Okay.
I think they're a bit overrated. I want the Niners to lose as many games as possible.
Okay. Do you think Dave Canales is fired in how many weeks, do you think? Do you think he makes it to the midway point? I don't think he makes it the whole year.
I'm glad you brought this up because
no way.
Listen, there's a whole bunch of people out there who were, in the media were saying, "Hey, Dave Canales could be a good idea to replace Pete Carroll."
Yeah, well, no,
because he worked for Carroll, and that'd be good continuity. And it was my God, like the number of DMs you should see that I exchanged with Jeff Simmons, like just saying, "I can't believe that people are talking about Dave Canales replaced. Like, why just keep Carroll? Like, no." Like, they even sound the same. Like, it's no. So, no, I'm glad he's know that. And to answer your question, like, people are saying, what a bold move by Dave Canales to bench Bryce Young. No, this is the guy making the decision that he thinks he has to save his job 2 weeks into the season, and he's not going to lose his job on Bryce Young. He's decided, you ain't costing me my chance. I'm just going to go with that old Andy Dalton guy and see if he can maybe... If I can make him look okay, then I might keep my job rather than Bryce Young making me look stupid. So that's what it's all about. It's about self-preservation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know. It's either indirectly, which is kind of what you're getting at, or it's directly made by Dave Tepper, who's the owner, who is just again, you want an owner to be super wealthy. And I mean, he's worth like $22 billion. That's what you want. You want owner.
No.
But what you don't want is this where he meddles. And he can't decide what he wants. And then you give a guy like this who doesn't really know anything about football to give too much power. And I mean, I'm just not going to be surprised if Canales gets fired. I'm just not. I'm really not going to be surprised at all.
Looks like a really stressed out version of Fraser Crane. And he does. He sits there and like he had the drink. He threw a drink at a fan, didn't he, last season? And then like you just think to him like he will have like he undoubtedly has had some influence on this decision as well. I know I'm saying it's like this guy's saving his job, but that might be because David Tepper says, hey, this isn't good enough.
You need to make a change. You need to do something. And this is the result of it. I mean, remember the whole thing with Frank Reich last year when he got fired was the reports that coming out that he didn't even want to draft Bryce Young.
Yeah. And look, this is, do you know what will help a little bit is that if the Panthers are smart, if they've decided, look, the Niners did this very well. They clearly decided that Lance was not good enough when they traded 3 first-round picks or 2 second-round picks and 2 first-round picks in their own pick to go and get him, and they moved on and they cut their losses. And if the Panthers are smart, they'll do the same. The worst thing they could do, if they think this guy's done, Bryce Young's not going to work out, you have to move on because they're probably going to have the number 1 overall pick again. So they get to have, I don't know, Shadir Sanders losing for them next year instead. But at least when he scored a touchdown, if he scores a touchdown, they can maybe play his rap song like Colorado's doing after every single touchdown rather than letting the band play. So that would be fun for everybody.
You are the best. You are the very best. Rob Staton with us, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Go check out all of his work. It's all brought to you by Superior Linen Service. Again, in case you missed it live, you can go back and watch it on YouTube. Listen to it, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Of course, always up at PuckSports.com. Thanks, Rob. We'll talk to you again next week. Appreciate the visit.
Congrats to the Cougs. Congrats, Puck. Congrats, Jim. Well done.
Go Cougs.